Today on Disney Decoded, we'll be talking about the Native American princess, Pocahontas.
Hi, welcome to Disney Decoded. My name is Manu.
And I'm Josh.
We have quite an interesting segment for you today.
That's right, Manu. We're going to paint with the colors of the wind.
Can you paint with all the colors of the wind?
That sounds great! Our main point today is that because Pocahontas never told her own story, the only information we have today comes from outside sources and stories told about her, and how the stories have been altered over time. More on this topic coming from our favorite historian, Sarah Smithsonian.
Glad to be back, Manu. There's a lot more here than what meets the eye. It's a puzzle with multiple missing pieces. It's a conundrum, really. Pocahontas, formerly known as Maratoga, was the daughter of a powerful Indian chief, Powhatan. This is a historical representation of Powhatan, while this is Disney's version.
Powhatan was actually his title and the name of his tribe, but to say that the English lacked cultural sensitivity would be an understatement. So Powhatan didn't get to be the leader of over 30 tribes by being a dummy, and he quickly realized that 1, the English were pretty clueless when it came to not dying of starvation, and 2, they were useful.
She was very free-spirited and a curious individual. Her curiosity led her to discover John Smith, who was 17 years her senior. This is an image of the real John Smith. Disney's romanticization is completely fictional, as many have predicted. It was loosely based on Smith's fabricated stories he wrote to entertain himself after he was banned from venturing again.
So what you're saying is that Disney's Pocahontas is actually based on a story written by an old and bored weirdo?
Not quite, Josh. What I'm trying to say is that the story of Pocahontas that we know is absurdly wrong.
So, Sarah, would you say Pocahontas is widely misunderstood?
Definitely, Manu. In fact, she hated being called Pocahontas, as it meant spoiled child.
Spoiled child. That's a little harsh. So, Sarah, why do you think Disney decided to make this movie when they did? For the people trying to look this up on your phone, it's $9.95. Put those away.
Well, Josh, 1995 was a good time for America financially, and Disney was well established by that time. So it appears as though they took a risk and it paid off.
Then, according to this idea, Sarah, do you think Disney's following the protocol or setting them?
Wow, could I possibly phone a friend?
Sure, who would you like to call?
How about our dear friend, Beatrice Bell?
Hello? Sarah Smithsonian? Is that you? How are you?
I'm wonderful. I need your help with an interesting question.
Do you think Disney's following the protocol or setting them?
No problem. Thanks for having me. Why, yes, I do. There were obviously feminist movements before this time, but this movie introduced a strong, independent woman to all the youth who watched it.
Look around you. This is where the path of hatred has brought us. This is the path I choose, Father. What will yours be?
My daughter speaks with the wisdom beyond her years. We have all come here with anger in our hearts, but she comes with courage and understanding.
Not to mention, it began a new era in feminism within Disney movies. Pocahontas was the first step to climbing the feminist mountain via Disney.
That is quite right. The feminist movement was indeed present. However, it was not well known or mainstream until Disney presented it.
Well, actually, Sarah, obviously there was feminism before 1995. The movement was uprising more and more every day, but this movie really helped present it to those younger kids in the audience. Now, they had their eyes set on equality and being considered just as brave and wise as men from a young age. Since this movie came out, Disney has had a pattern of stories about princesses and girls and their constant bravery and ability to go above and beyond the stereotypical female.
I have a question for you, Professor Bell. Do you think we would have interpreted Pocahontas' story differently if it would have been told from her point of view?
Interesting questions. I would say yes and no, because if Pocahontas wrote her own story, she would have just been another person with another biography. But this way, we have more insight and interest in her life.
So, Professor, are you saying that Pocahontas not writing her own story worked to her advantage and shot her name into fame?
Maybe or maybe not. Since we don't have any idea or event to cross-reference the influence we have had to something else, we may never know for certain. But in my opinion, I would say it both helped and hindered her story.
Now I'm interested. Professor Bell, how would you say it helped her story? Because in my opinion, we will never know the truth. It will always be a third party telling her story. It's like if someone wrote my autobiography. It would never be my point of view. It would always be their thoughts on me.
Let me put you on speaker real quick. As I said, Sarah, it also hindered her story. And I said that precisely because of what you pointed out. By helping, I meant that due to multiple stories and different perspectives of her, scholars and people in general are more interested in her original story and origin than they would have been if her story was rather as cut and dry as an autobiography.
So, Sarah, why do you think Disney changed the original story so much?
Well, Manu, obviously Disney is a massive corporation which is known for its princesses and happily ever afters. Therefore, they have a certain Disney ideology they try to follow, and the original story of Pocahontas doesn't exactly have a happy ending. They changed the story to attract an abundance of viewers. I think we can safely say they were successful.
Well, maybe that's why Pocahontas 2 isn't as successful, because it's somewhat, well, more than the first movie at least, follows the legitimacy of history.
Well, Josh, maybe so. But there's the fact that Disney's sequels were almost never as successful as the originals.
So, Sarah, do you think Disney's writers had any influences in rewriting the story? Like, did any of the old stories hint at the idea of a possible romance?
Actually, Manu, a lot of society's concepts influenced Disney's writings. But to answer your question, none of the earlier versions of Pocahontas' story hinted at romance, but many did include the concept of friendship between her and John Smith.
Well, then obviously, in true Disney fashion, everything in Pocahontas' life was exaggerated and added to entertain a mass of people and to make profit.
I guess you could say that. It's sad, really, because the real Pocahontas was much more interesting and went through trials and tribulations all through her life. She was much more well-developed than Disney's version. So in conclusion, Pocahontas never got to tell her own story, so we are left with the incomplete accounts of her life, thus enabling us to never completely understand the real Pocahontas.
After John Smith traveled back to England, I helped my people cultivate the fields. More English, French, and Spaniards came to visit, and they greeted us with guns and germs and steel. They forced us into unknown lands of exile. They pillaged, raped, and left us all for dead. So now I'm far more liberal with a weapon.
See you next time on Disney Decoded.